Hi everyone, I hope you're well. This week in the Torah, we learned a little bit about Yitzchak. Yitzchak is in many ways, a small, almost forgotten character. Certainly of the three Avot, the three patriarchs, Avraham, Yitzchak, and Yaacov, he is by far the smallest of the three in terms of our sense of his personality, the space he takes up in the narrative. He's a kind of a transitional bridge character, in effect, the son of his father and the father of his son, more than he is a character in his own right. But in this week's Torah portion, he reappears a little bit. The portion is really about in the aftermath of his mother's passing, of Sarah's death, and he turns up. We have a sense after the binding of Isaac's story that he had disappeared, literally, in the sense that Avraham had walked up the mountain with him, but then the Torah says Avraham walked down, and it doesn't mention Yitzchak, and you have no idea where he is, even though clearly he had survived the trauma of his near sacrifice. The rabbis fill in the gap, and they expound on a verse that says that he had just come back from the vicinity of Be'er Lahai Ro'i, some place where someone has been seen, specifically Hagar. Hagar had been, of course, the concubine of Avraham, with whom they had the child Yishmael, who Avraham, at Sarah's behest, had expelled and into the wilderness, ostensibly to die, never to be heard from again. And we're told in the earlier story that, God had compassion upon Hagar and Ishmael, had literally saved them from starving in the wilderness. So the question is, why does what does it mean for the Torah to say, oh, that's where Yitzchak went, to the same place? The rabbis fill in in effect, that gap, that question, by saying Yitzchak went to find Hagar, and maybe even to somehow put her together with his father, with Avraham, so that Avraham would have another wife. They would in effect, have a second act in their lives. I think what's interesting about that is that what it suggests about not just Yitzchak but also God is that Yitzchak has a sense that part of what it means to be a person is to be compassionate, to be sensitive to others. And even in this moment where ostensibly, theoretically, he's completely traumatized by what had happened to him in terms of almost being slaughtered by his father, rather than just focus on that, what he does is he goes to seek out Hagar. So that on the one hand, there's a sense that God had been compassionate to Hagar by saving her, and that's why that place is named as a place where God sees, feels the pain of others. And in effect, Isaac is doing the same thing. And I think that's a way of saying that, there is a kind of a balance always in life between having a perspective of God that in some ways is quite narcissistic and says, oh, I need God to be close, I need God to be with me all the time, and not really recognizing God's otherness, on the one hand, and on the other hand, for some people who have a sense that God is not present at all in their lives, that God is only other, he's only remote, they need to have that sense of presence as well, and that the story is suggesting that kind of balance between a God who is capable of making these very difficult, in some ways absurd demands upon human beings, on the other hand, and on the other hand, being quite compassionate towards them. So I wish you all a Shabbat Shalom. Dress warmly now that it's getting cold. See you in Shul.